All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Pursuit of Ownership. It is Payton here, and we have a very special guest today. Some of you guys might know who he is, Matt Guarino. Matt, how are you doing?
Wow, I get the very special guest. Wow, pleasure to
Well,
be here with you, Peyton. This is
yeah, of
great.
course. I don't think I've ever actually recorded with you solo, so
No,
this is a big moment here.
no, I'm usually stuck with Tyler, so this is good. Got an upgrade today, which I'm proud about, and I'm also happy that he gave me something to do today. I'm sitting here in my PJs. I was been losing money in the stock market all morning, so this is a welcome distraction.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually don't have clinic this morning, so I feel like I'm getting a small glimpse into your life with, only being at the office 1 or 2 days a week. I can see the struggle of, finding things to do.
Yeah, you got to have the list of hobbies. Like I got to keep adding to it too, because otherwise, what do you, I just had a snow. It snowed all last week, so I was home. So I got to really like keep myself busy. It's a constant struggle.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to get a glimpse of life on the other side. So I'm glad to be with you here this morning. Today we're going to go into a topic that's a little bit different than we normally go into because I've been getting some people asking me about it. There probably is a good amount of people that want to know more about this topic, and that is residencies. Matt is one of the people here at Shared Practices that has been through a residency.
I think I'm one of
George,
the only one. Like me
yeah,
and
well, I
Richard
guess
are the only.
yeah, exactly. And Richard's like, it was interesting because it was with the military. So I feel like that's not like your
Hmm.
standard residency. So really, you're the only one that we have and we can kind of consult with when it comes to this topic. Obviously, George is not going to be a huge help on this front.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, it's just it's good to have you on here today, and we'll kind of dip into kind of a little bit of your story and how you got to where you are today. Um,
Let's
so
do it.
yeah, if you wouldn't mind just kind of bring us up to speed. I know you've kind of told your story a little bit before, but we can even go back to dental school, just talk about your experience there, and then we'll move forward.
What do you want to know? Ask me something. Because I could go in
So
many different directions.
yeah, absolutely. So I guess where did your whole motivation for ownership start? Was that early in school? Was it late in school? Did you really not have a plan? Like, where did this whole journey begin for you?
It came when I discovered dental podcasts, and I want to say that was my second year. The first bastion of that was Howard. Howard yelling at the mic was some of my best times coming home from dental school. Going on the train, pulling him up, listening. Old man yell at clouds, kind of thing. But his message
Exactly.
was spot on, and like everything he was saying, I loved it. And from there, I found some others, and then found SP. Soon after Richard started it, and that was the biggest driver of getting me into ownership was listening to share praxis. But I was obsessed, man. I would be taking notes on my phone, coming home from school, and I was totally into it. So it was podcast, really.
That's awesome. Was Dentaltown a big thing yet? I mean, I know you since you said you were listening to
Yeah,
Howard.
yeah, Dental Town too. I was big in the ambitious dental students group as a lurker. I'm very much a lurker, not so much. This is a new thing for me to be like vocal. I was very much just like, all right, let me just fly under the radar, consume all this information, and then make it big. I thought was the
Yeah. Well, clearly it's all worked out for you here.
plan.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to hear. I know a lot of people kind of got started on Howard's podcast, especially before so many different podcasts came into the scene. Um, but yeah, he has a really good message, and obviously he kind of put you on the right track. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean the big difference for people in school now is like the opportunities for community are so much greater than I had it even 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
oh yeah,
Um, you know, the masterminds with share practices. There's now countless podcasts, Facebook groups. There's so many areas to connect with similar like-minded people that for me, like my main friend group at school was not into ownership the way I was. So I was very much just like on an island, lurking and. Now it's just so much. Everyone's so much more connected.
yeah, that's a really good point to make. And honestly, I feel like it's gotten to the point now where it's almost the opposite problem, where there's so
Hmm.
much information out there and there's so much that you can consume. It's just a matter of figuring out, okay, what actually is worth it and what's the best way to spend my time, which is a great problem to have, but it is a problem nonetheless.
Yeah, it's definitely information overload these days. But yeah, I mean, most of my dental school was spent thinking about ownership and how was I going to get myself there the fastest. And if you if you ask my instructors at school like about me, they would not speak highly. I wouldn't think. I was, I, yeah, I was not a shining student. I, just kind of ruffled some feathers. Like I was difficult, I would say.
I could never see that.
So,
With your personality, it's not coming through. I don't know. So yeah, so you said you got into podcast D2. So moving into D3, D4, you started seeing more clinic time. How did your, lens of looking at practice ownership and all that kind of stuff, how did that shape your, next two or last 2 years of dental school?
I mean, it was mainly a focus of, while I was learning, some of the how to buy a practice from podcasts in school, I was just like, let me get, the most clinical reps and like the most experience I could out of dental school. So I was a hustler in school. Like I was, constantly ahead. We had points in our school of like clinical requirements, you and Tyler are the same way, kind of just way ahead of the peers. And that was me. I wanted to like bust through it so I could just hang out in the OS wing and like learn how to take out teeth. And um, so yeah, I was constantly trying to like what is going to serve me long term in this school experience. So I would like the stuff that I didn't think mattered, like trim and dyes or whatever the hell they have you do. Like they were terrible. My wax tooth was awful. Like my lab work was shoddy. Like I would constantly have crowns get rejected by this instructor who's so mean when you have to send out crowns to like wherever we send them, Taiwan or something, some Asian country.
Mm-hmm.
He would constantly reject my thing. It was just, yeah, it was a struggle to get through there.
Yeah. Well, and for a lot of people, I feel like a lot of people will derive their self-worth from like how good their lab work is and that kind of thing. When at the end of the day, once you graduate, it's not like you're going to be in your office trimming dyes. I mean, maybe you are, but you probably shouldn't be.
I mean, those
So,
skills will like serve you. They're not like worthless by any means, but I think they're more of like, I could see it if you're getting into cosmetics, like really, really heavily, you know, the type of dentistry I do isn't so like fine touch little things. So for me, it was like I just don't care about this stuff.
yeah. And I think it's super, super important that you bring that up because if that's like what you want to do, if you want to have a really high end cosmetic practice or you want to do just things that require very, a lot of precision, then, focusing on those things is not a waste of your time.
No.
And that's kind of, I feel like going to be the theme a little bit of this episode. Just, making it what you want. And if you want to be very clinically oriented, if you see yourself being there for a long time, then residency it's definitely not the worst option. And in many cases, it could even be a really good option. So yeah, so you said, try to get as much done as you could in clinic.
Mm-hmm.
Moving forward, getting closer to graduation, maybe we can kind of skip to like spring of your D4 year. What did that look like for you as far as, looking for a job, residency, whatever that was?
So my fourth year was a little bit tumultuous, I would say, and it was some personal things. I can't quite speak on the specifics of them, but my original plan was to have two part-time jobs. I was going to work 6 days a week in the Boston area, and I had those all lined up spring semester. Some things got thrown my way where that was out the window. So it came to be like the summer after I graduated, and I didn't have a plan at that point. And I just saw a residency open, like a position open on Dental Town, actually. And it was in New York. I'm like, well, my fiance, who's my wife now, she's a singer, so she likes to be in New York. And I don't know. I'm a couple. At that point, it had been like 5 months since I touched a tooth because I finished clinic stuff early. I was like, I'm kind of feeling rusty. Like, do I really want to go in the working world and like, fuddle around? I did like 12 crowns in dental school. Like, am I really gonna just like start cranking them out? So I visited. It seemed like a place I could grow, and I just kind of took the leap. I didn't talk to any former residents. I didn't do the match process. Like none of this I would recommend. Like do some more vetting into these programs before you just like say yes. And I said yes on the spot. I visited that day and I signed that day. And like we found an apartment the next day. Like it was very, very quick.
That's very impressive, honestly. Just being able to make that snap decision like that. That's very impressive. Do you mind if we take just a second to backpedal and say maybe how like you should maybe go about this process rather than just like I'm not trying to be insulting, but just to give people an idea.
I think that'd be worthwhile for the listeners who, you know, hopefully won't be as frantic as I was.
Yeah.
No, I think really researching these programs and researching residency program is a lot tougher than like researching a dental school. I would imagine, Student Doctor Network, Dental Town, Facebook groups are an area where you could post about ones you're thinking about, and you really want to talk to current residents, like about what kind of experience they're getting. What does a day to day look like? Like, would they choose to do this program again if they could? And residency is a bit weird in that you don't get to choose where you go; you do get to rank them. Um, but I would really be thinking of like, okay, what am I doing this residency for? What am I hoping to come out of this with? Like, what am I taking away from it? And really getting clear on that. I think there's a couple routes you can go. One I see is like if you want to go to like an implant heavy residency would be a really great idea for someone who's into that. I know there's a bunch of them out there. I know Austin Davis went to the Foundry down in the South and had a great experience there. But that would be one path. Other paths are like, mainly kind of more volume. That's what I kind of felt I needed at the time. I needed volume of patients. I need reps, and like from there, getting specialty procedures under your something that you can handle. Endo, surgery, and a little bit of implants, and getting all that something that you can bring into ownership. So really being intentional about what you're looking for is what I would recommend.
Yeah. Yeah. And that definitely sounds super good. A thing that I feel like is kind of interesting now, and I don't know how long this will be true, but we just kind of finished up 2020 here, going into 2021. Most of the time beforehand, like before the whole virus, you could go visit the programs. You'd have an interview day, you'd go talk to them a little bit. Whereas now, most of that's on Zoom. And I feel like that interview day is where you'd often be able to, maybe talk with the people that are in the program, kind of get a feeling of what the program's like. Because I know for me, like when I was touring dental schools, you'd go to the school and you'd kind of get like a feeling, like you'd kind of feel like, oh, like this is somewhere I could see myself being. Or on the flip side, it's like, wow, I really don't like it here. So that's definitely an obstacle that I feel like people are going to have going forward, and might make it a little bit harder to connect with residents that are currently in the programs.
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely want to talk to a resident virtually. Like, I would not go to a program without talking to a resident. That's pretty standard. I kind of firmly believe that, and it's tougher now for sure. You can't get that feeling. You can't be there and see it and touch it and have that good gut feeling that this is right for you. I mean, other considerations I would be, if I was going into this, I would be flexible with my location. I would know that it's 1 year, as long as it fit in my family, conditions. I would go wherever. You don't have to go where you're going to be practicing or where you're going to be owning. Like that shouldn't be too much of a part of your consideration. If you can be okay living there for a year, if it fits in your family situation, and it's a solid program, then make the leap.
Yeah, I totally get that. Because at the end of the day, like there is a ton of programs out there. Like I'd venture to say there's hundreds between AGDs, GPRs, like for sure. And there's good programs out there and there's bad programs too. So if you just say, hey, I want to stay in this very specific radius, and the only programs that are in your radius maybe aren't as good, then it's not going to be a good use of your time. And I feel like, if you're listening to this podcast, if you're as proactive as someone who is listening is, then you're probably going to want to get the most out of that year. And, limiting your radius to where you go definitely can, put a damper on that.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't like buying a practice. Like, you're not going to be there for 30 years. This is very clearly 1 year. So the location shouldn't make that much a consideration. And, I think we've had so many docs now buy practices not in the areas where they live to know that it's very doable. Broker listings are online. You can send mailers wherever, like you can fly places. It's not a hindrance. Like, I remember my parents encouraging me to go to school in Boston because they wanted me to live there after school. And like that didn't make a difference at all. Like being at a school around the place you're going to live, like it maybe made networking a little bit easier, but like it doesn't move the needle at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know I definitely looked at school as like, I would like to live here after graduation. So I kind of viewed it as like a test drive. So, I mean, maybe if you did find a good program in a place you're considering living, that would be great.
Yeah,
But don't, make that the end all be all. That's definitely kind of a closed-minded way to look at it.
sure.
Yeah. Great. So we kind of talked about, how you should go about looking for one of these residencies. So if you wouldn't mind getting into a little bit more details as far as what yours looked like, what kind of experiences you got, and maybe even you could even go into like day to day, like what it looked like inside the residency. Because I know a lot of them, they kind of say like, oh, we do surgery or we do, a lot of molar endo, but
Mhm.
you don't really know what it's like until you're in the program.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you could, go into that a little bit, that would be very helpful for people listening.
Yeah, I will. And let me take one step back and bring up one other thing of like, when does this make sense for someone? I think now in the current climate of dental schools, with everything that's happened with COVID, with so much of your clinic being shut down or being partially full, or sounds awful.
Yeah,
Like,
it's not good.
it sounds awful. Oh, all the layers of PPE you got to put on. You're like a friggin' biohazard man.
Astronaut is what I like to say to patients. It's like, I'm just going to turn into an astronaut real quick and then we'll be
Oh,
ready to go.
brutal. I would always get yelled at for my things not covering all like my pants, the stupid like gown you had to wear. It's dumb.
We're, for example, we're not allowed to wear scrub, or we're not allowed to wear jogger scrubs,
No,
because if
no,
your
no.
ankles are
Ankles.
exposed, then
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep. Yep.
the world is ending.
World is ending.
Yeah.
So, anyways, a lot of people's clinic experience at school is suffered. So, like, it's starting to make a lot more sense for people to look into residencies as a way to really increase their speed, increase their competency, and just really their comfort level. I think is the biggest thing. Like, you don't like getting into ownership without being clinically comfortable. Like, really, is not something I would recommend to anyone. It's extremely stressful. Like, getting into ownership is going to present tons of leadership challenges that you really can't prepare for, but you can prepare for the clinical challenges that you're going to be when you're an owner. Like, that very well transfers over. If you feel comfortable doing a molar root canal as a resident, you're going to feel comfortable doing a molar root canal as an owner. Like, it's a little different because you're like, this is my patient. They're going to be with me for a while. And like, I'm more quote unquote responsible for the result. But like, that's not that much. So that's where I see it really makes sense, is like really feeling comfortable. And then from there, like expanding what you can do. Like, you're going to come out of dental school, you can take out a pretty normal tooth. You can do a basic single canal, endo. You can kind of prep a crown, kind of do fillings. I'm speaking for myself. This is how I came out. I was like,
Nah,
I
I
can
think this is
kind of do
pretty
this
spot
stuff. So like, I could have gone to an associate job, but like I ascertained that my experience in the residency would outweigh whatever I would get in an associate job. I'm just worried about those jobs not being busy enough. And I think if you find the right one, it's great. I don't subscribe to like, let me work for a doc who's going to mentor me and show me the business side. I don't like that. I'll
Yeah.
I'll find my own sources of information that isn't this guy or gal has been doing it for 30 years. Like, I'd rather crowdsource it with a bunch of people's experience than this one person's.
Yeah.
That was my motivation for going into it.
And I was going to say the thing that you just said about finding someone to mentor you on the business side. If you think about it, if they want to keep you as an associate long term, it's kind of against their interests to mentor you in the business part. Because if they mentor you well enough, you're just going to realize like, hey, why am I here with this guy or girl? I'm just going to leave and do my own thing.
And I'm speaking in generalities. There's exceptions to all this, but like, it's like if like the founders of Netflix went to the Blockbuster people and were like, "Hey, can you mentor me in how to run like a movie business?" Like, I would say that a lot of people who've been doing it for a while aren't up to speed on the new ways of doing things. So
Yeah.
I would rather learn that elsewhere.
Yeah, at the end of the day, what's going to move the needle is being willing to adapt to new things that are coming along. And if you aren't willing to adapt, you're going to get left behind. And I feel like that Blockbuster analogy was a perfect example of that.
When I first used the Elements app from Dentist Advisors, I realized a few really cool things. First off, you get into the app and it helps you calculate your current net worth. So you plug in all of your assets, you plug in your debts, and it pumps out not only your net worth, but also you can track your savings rate, your practice profitability rate, your liquidity, a whole lot more. And it reaffirmed immediately to me the power of practice ownership. If you buy a healthy dental practice and take out a loan, and then simply pay down that loan while improving that practice each year, you now are well on your way to having enough assets to make work optional. The next thing it did for me was that it got me excited about getting organized, getting everything in there, having it be accurate. So that net worth number was an accurate number and I could see it change over time. It turned it into a game. I'm now excited about getting organized, having a plan, and making that number move rather than being stressed out by, I should be doing this, that, and the other. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to get organized. I feel like it's all a little bit out of control. It's now clear and something I'm excited about. If you want to have this same experience of getting organized, seeing your net worth, and then having a plan to move forward on that, go to dentistadvisors.com/shared beta.
All right. So let's, you wanted to know about the day-to-day at the residency.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and jump into that.
So I did a GPR, which is different than an AGD, as the listeners know, that it's hospital based. So I was in a hospital. There was, I think, 7 or 8 other residents in my program. I started like a few months after everyone. They had a oral surgery resident there all the time. And I probably saw, 12 to 15 patients a day when I was doing regular dentistry. They also had an emergency doc that switched every day. So one day every 2 weeks or so, you would do just emergencies all day, which there were a ton of. The great part about my program was there's just so many patients. Like the waiting room was slammed, and like people would show up for emergencies, and it was a walk-in. Like you sign your name, they would get there at 8:30. They would wait sometimes to like 3. Like they would sit there and wait.
Wow.
So it was just like overflowed with patients, and yeah, I mean that it just made you get your reps up quick. And
I was gonna say that sounds awesome to me. I feel like that's like what a dental student would want to get right out of school is just a lot of experience, and it sounds like that's what you had.
Yeah, but it was like I was hard headed about it all. Like I didn't follow their protocols that I didn't believe in. Like it was still a little bit of a dental school. If they wanted you to do 1 or 2 fillings, that's it. Nope, can't do that other one. Nope, can't do that. Can't do those 2 crowns at once. You got to do 1 at a time, and then you can do the other one some other day. So I really fought against that, and I did make my way through it. I did like grind them down where they were like, okay, just go ahead, guy. Like, stop bugging me.
I was gonna say it's worth it for them just to stop, have you stop bugging them.
Yeah, like they didn't want me doing this molar root canal. It's too difficult. Or they don't want me taking out this wisdom tooth. Oh, that's impacted. It's got to go to the surgery resident. Or like, you can't do this implant. You've never done one before. Like you have to. I fought. Like it's just like dental school, right? Like you can't just show up and expect to come out with this great experience. Like the experience you have is what you make it. So I was extremely motivated and hard-headed and worked hard. And I was like, I'm going to get the most out of this I can. And I'm not going to take the rules that I don't believe in and follow them. Like I'm just not. And it paid off. Like I did like tons of root canals, tons of extractions, fillings, crowns, no aesthetic work because it's still residency, patients who don't have the money for that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, you just gotta be diligent and work hard and not take the stops that the instructors are going to try to give you.
Yeah, I can definitely confirm you there. There's many of those in dental school.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, that sounds great. So you really did a whole lot. You touched on all the bigger procedures that a lot of people like to learn out of school. So are you in clinic every single day or hourly, like was it 8 to 5? Like what did that look like for your residency experience?
There's a lot of education that you do too. There's a lot of lectures. So it would usually be like an 8 a.m. lecture. And then you start clinic at 9, you go to 5. There's rotations involved with the GPR. Probably the worst part of a GPR is the rotations in the hospital. So like 4 weeks out of the year in the morning, I had to go be a babysitter to the anesthesiologist and like get berated by these people. Or I had to go like shadow this internal medicine doctor or like then a family medicine doctor. And you had to get all trained in like CPR and like, all these like just hospital BS that you'll never use. That's the big downside. Like, and then I didn't even get to actually probably the worst thing, being on call. have fun with that one. If you're
Yeah.
if anyone knows what that's like, oh man, that's tough.
Like sleep is not, I know at least for me, like I cannot sleep well knowing that I am like responsible for answering phones. Like
Oh, I mean,
it's
and that
just,
beeper is loud.
oh, I'm sure it leaves no room for you to sleep.
No, and like you go to the hospital, you can't really do much because like there's no dental material. Like you can't take out a tooth at the hospital. Like you go there and you can do in like IND. There was a lot of like facial lacerations, so I was like stitching some guys like freaking forehead, you know. So like but it was honestly like that part, as annoying as it was still good experience. Like I don't know, just being that like in that like crisis mode, like there's a thing going on here that's urgent, and I'm the one to do it all, and there's no one helping you. There's no assistance. There's no one overseeing you. It's just you there with like some stitches, and you're like trying to figure this out. Um, but yeah, I mean it's a time commitment, and it's it affects your sleep and all that. But
It's a good experience nonetheless.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the one other big thing about residencies we haven't touched on is like you're able, back to dental procedures, you're able to get out of your comfort zone without the risk. Like you have the instructors who have your back, and that's not like any job in the real world of dentistry. Like there's a lot more liability when it's you doing the dentistry in private practice versus residency. So like having them there, and also having like, we had specialists there every day. I had a surgeon there every day. I had an endodontist there every week. I had a periodontist there every week. I had an aesthetic guy there every week. I guess I don't even think he was a prosthodontist. I think he was just like, he does aesthetics.
That's his thing.
No, you should have saw him. So he's this like little short bald guy, but he wore these like really expensive suits with like these big Windsor knots and like all this like jewelry. And like, he was like, I'm the cosmetic guy.
He looked like the cosmetic guy. He looked the part.
It was just so like, but he's walking into this like hospital, like he was so fish out of water.
Oh my gosh, wow, that's fantastic.
I loved him though.
He was on brand. Like he didn't he didn't leave it up for interpretation. It's like, I am the cosmetic guy.
I would say his name, but honestly, I forget it because I want to shout him out. He was amazing.
That's awesome.
But anyways, like the value of working with those specialists is really it's a lot. Like I think you come out with a lot of problem solving skills. Like in root canal, it's very technique sensitive, and like to know, like I can't get down the canal with my 10-5. Like what do I do? All right, try this thing. Okay, that didn't work. All right, try this thing. Okay, that didn't work. Try use this other thing. All right, that didn't work. Try this thing. Okay, that worked. And now you have a toolbox of like 8 things I can go to if my thing's not going the way I want. Like my implant's not syncing. Okay, this is what you try. And like working with a specialist where you pick up these pearls and they stick with you. I told everyone at Chiropractic at our last meeting about this one technique my surgeon always does, where he grabs a tooth with the forceps and he just shakes it. He just shakes their head and like doesn't elevate, just like grabs it, apical pressure, shake. It works amazing. And I use it all the time now. And I think about it every time I do it.
I am waiting for a single rooted tooth to walk through the OMS door because it's going to happen. And I have been telling my partner, it's like, all right, this might seem a little ridiculous, but it works. And I'm just waiting for the moment to be able to try that.
Every tooth is a single rooted tooth if you make it one.
Yeah, that's if you don't have all the professors being like, oh no, this is the handpiece. Oh no.
I mean, I haven't taken out a molar without a handpiece in like forever. Why would you ever? It's like, why would you ever do that? Like, unless it's like hanging off. Like, I would never do that.
Yeah, that doesn't really make me feel any better, Matt.
No.
Okay, actually, I want to backtrack a little bit. This is kind of a selfish question, but I feel like people might be wondering, how often were you on call during your residency?
So my residency was good and bad in that we didn't fill all the seats. One of the reasons the spot was open for me in September. So we were fully stocked as like 12 people. I think we had I think it was 7, and then 1 dropped. So we got to 6. So like I was on call every 6th day, just rotated amongst the people. So you're either on call during the clinic day, like 9 to 5, or you're on call at night, like 5 to 6 a.m., or
wow.
you had the full weekend. Like you had like a Saturday from like noon to the next. I don't know. It was a lot. I was on call a lot of time. Like once a week.
That doesn't sound like a good experience to me, honestly.
No. I mean, most programs have like 12 to 15 residents, so it's easier to divvy it up.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say that was going to be my next question. Was your program normal size, smaller, bigger? What can people normally expect for residencies?
Yeah, I think 12 to 15 are about average. Again, I didn't research these super high, so I'm not like super well versed.
We could be putting out just arbitrary
Yeah. Oh,
numbers
yeah.
here, and
Oh, I'm
okay,
yeah,
I like
absolutely.
honestly, I like that. Because
These are
that way
all
you have to
these
do
are
your
all
own
opinions.
research. We don't want to make it too easy.
No, because it wasn't easy for me, so I gotta make it a little hard for people.
Oh my gosh, that's too good.
No, but
Uh,
I would be interested to hear from like an AEGD perspective on how it might be different. I know uh, they have similar things that aren't so great as far as like they are a lot of times linked to dental schools, so they're very much like there's some hand holding of dental students involved, and there's a lot of this is just what I've heard of like the medically compromised type patients go to the AEGD residence. That's how it worked in my school.
mhm.
So we thankfully didn't have to deal with a lot of the medically compromised. Like nothing against those people, but I knew that wasn't going to be the patients that I served long term. So I didn't care so much about learning the intricacies of how to work, with all that. So thankfully I didn't have to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and yeah, AGD definitely has a little bit different perspective on things. I feel like the general consensus that I've heard, and it might just really depend on the program, is that AGD is a little bit more geared towards people that have graduated and just want to learn a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, GPR just kind of throws you right in. It's more hospital based, a little bit quicker. But yeah, regardless of, whether it's an AGD or a GPR, you can find a good program. It's just a matter of finding out if it fits, what you want for your future and, for your practice. So yeah, it sounds like you had a pretty good overall experience in residency. And from what I've kind of talked to you outside of the podcast, it sounds like you would definitely recommend it to someone if, that's what they're looking to do for their career long term.
Yeah, as long as the program gave them the freedom to kind of make it a good experience. And really tough to decipher from a virtual interview if that's going to be the case. That's why I really recommend talking to residents, because they're going to give you like the honest feedback of what's going on there without like, caring about if you go there or not. So that's something I'd really recommend. And yeah, I mean, I think I go back to like how much these clinical skills transfer, and you can pick up a lot through CE, but it's a lot to ask for a first year associate to drop the amount of money it would take to learn all these skills through CE and take off the time at work. And like you may like think that's a plan in theory, but when you're actually like writing the check for $10,000 and buying flights to do an implant course, like
it looks a little different.
I was an associate. Like, you're not flush with money. At least I wasn't. Like,
yeah, you got all those New York taxes building up on you there.
They have city tax and state tax and federal. There's 3 taxes.
Yeah, as much as I want to say that I'm jealous, I'm really not. Here in Texas, we have it pretty nice, so I don't plan on moving to New York anytime soon.
No, you're good.
Yeah. Great. So yeah, like you said, sounds like you had a pretty good overall residency experience. So once you finished your residency and you were looking for practices, would you care to elaborate a little bit on how that helped you get into the practice that you got into, or just when you were searching, how it kind of opened up more options for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was looking through the whole year. So I started in September. Once I got my feet wet for 2 months, I was actively looking starting in November. So I was calling brokers. I was constantly looking at their websites. I was talking to banks. I was sending mailers. I was, on Dental Town. I instead of eating with the other residents, I would take my lunch to the library and I would go on Dental Town and I'd read threads and eat my lunch like a loner.
You were just getting it done in there. The library, you were just getting it done.
Yeah. Another funny thing. So I was always the one. I would leave at 5 on the dot. I would be out the door. Everyone would know that like, oh, he's gone. And all the other residents would kind of like stay and like, I don't know, help each other out, or like, not me. I was 5 o'clock.
Oh my gosh. So for the listeners who don't know Matt personally, he really hasn't strayed away from this. This is still very much a part of his life. So for Tyler and I to schedule an interview with Matt, it's near impossible. Matt's Eastern time zone, I'm Central, and like dental school is from 8 to 5, like
Mhm.
like normal people. Since Matt has that extra hour, being on the Eastern time zone, it is so hard to schedule, and that's why like I basically have to get a cancellation just to be able to interview with Matt. So
Yeah.
it's
Hey,
nice
I'm
to
very
see.
flexible 9 to 5.
Oh,
Very.
you are incredibly.
Except Monday.
So yeah, I'm glad that we were able to get this little time slot here. I basically have to bank on a cancellation at school to record
Yeah,
with Matt.
it happens.
Yeah.
No, so yeah, so that year I was looking pretty heavily and got close to a couple. So like the residency itself didn't prepare me for ownership other than the clinical aspect. That prepared me for ownership and feeling comfortable like walking into a higher size practice than I could have, I think, being an associate right out of school.
Definitely.
So that was always the plan. I would end residency and I would buy practice. That was like the plan. And it just didn't come to fruition. I didn't find the one that fit. I was having banking issues because they kind of in New York they treat residency like school. So they were like, you're a new grad, like right out of school. I'm like, no, I'm a resident, been out for a year. Here's all these procedures I've done. Like, come on, can we like drop the act here?
Can we get this going here?
Yeah, like I'm trying to make you some interest here. Like, just
Let me
but
help
no,
you.
yeah. I even entertained a startup at this time. I was actually looking in the Breakaway affiliate program before that all blew up. Like, thank gosh I didn't sign that because I almost did.
Yeah.
But so then I basically, I in the theme of all this, right? Like every step you make is with ownership in mind, if that's your end goal. So like, okay, I got the residency, I had a good clinical experience, I felt comfortable. My next move again was with ownership in mind. So I got an associate job at a fee-for-service practice that I know I could show high production. Like that was the only consideration of where I was going to work right after residencies. Like, where can I show on paper I'm doing the most dentistry? And I figured, like, okay, if it's a fee-for-service practice, I'm not hamstrung by the in-network insurance fees, because a lot of these new grad jobs are like union plans or Medicaid or these lower reimbursing stuff that the owner doesn't want to do, so he schleps off on some associate. So like I didn't care how much I was making. Like that was not a consideration. I actually got really screwed in the way they did their bonus structure. I barely made any money, but like
that's not the first time I've heard of this happening.
Yeah, it's they got it from MGE, the people down in Florida, and they have this terrible associate bonus structure that completely screws you. I never did the actual calculation, but I'm sure I was making 25% or lower on what I was doing.
It's probably good for you to not do that calculation. Just let that be.
But it got me what I want, though, right? Like I showed good production that I was able to buy a practice doing 1.5, and the bank didn't blink an eye. And I was, when I set the practice to them, I was 4 months out of residency, so like still pretty early on. And
I was going to ask you, how long of a production history did they need to see to approve you on something like that?
Well, they were able to. So I had 3 months to show, and they were able to use residency stuff too. So I pulled the reports from like just like not like dollar numbers, but like did this number of this procedure, so they could see I could do specialty procedures that the owner doc, the seller of my practice, couldn't do. So they do kind of like, they are willing to like build a story around you to sell to their underwriters. Like, here's what he's bringing to the practice that doesn't show up on paper. So it worked, I suppose.
Yeah, that sounds really good. So when you were talking to banks, is there anything you felt like you did along the way that kind of boosted your chances of, getting that loan? Because I know, to me, like loaning $1.5 million to someone that's only been actually practicing, outside of residency for a couple months sounds kind of crazy. So did you have to pull any strings there, or were they were they not too strict on, those terms?
So the purchase price was 1.25. I think the only way this worked is my fiance at the time had an inheritance from her grandmother passing, and I added myself to, or I had her add me to the account. So like if I hadn't done that step, I wouldn't have shown the liquidity necessary to be a practice owner, because you need to have that to be an owner. You can't be successful if you don't have 10% of the purchase price in the bank. Like clearly you're irresponsible financially.
Mm-hmm. It's not like you just were in school for forever.
Yeah,
And
I
yeah.
didn't take out 450K in loans, or like, I wasn't working through my 20s. Like I was in school and I was
Yeah.
in residency making 38,000.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
38,000.
don't have much savings. What do
Oh,
you want me to do here?
love a good sarcasm rant there. That's solid. Uh, that's good. Well, that's awesome that you're able to get into that opportunity. So, would you? Let's ask it this way. Would you have been able to get into this opportunity had you not done the residency?
Um, Probably, yeah. Like, would I have been able to get it? Yeah, if I showed production from an associate job where I worked that was somewhat high.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they probably have some formulas of when it makes sense for them, and I think they took into account the practice too. Like that's a big decision maker of whether they're alone is the practice.
Mm-hmm.
So if the practice is cash flowing well, which this one was, like they're going to be a little more lenient on who they give it to.
Mm-hmm.
If it was like a $1.5 million practice with a 78% overhead, maybe they would have paused on that.
I would
But
hope they would pause on that. My goodness.
yeah, but like that's it's not just you that they're loaning. They're
Mm-hmm.
loaning based on the practice. So I think I would have got it regardless.
Yeah. Do you feel like any of the skills you learned in your residency helped making that make that transition a little bit easier?
Yeah, all of them.
Okay, cool. That's kind of where I was trying to go with that, and you really you weren't biting on it. I was like, I'd ask this a different way.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, like, because he was a bread and butter dentist, and he didn't do extractions, endo, implants. So I brought all those in, and that increased the production we were doing at the practice without changing anything. And so yeah, I really believe in getting a really good clinical foundation and then getting into ownership. I wouldn't I wouldn't delay it for years because of that, but I would also try to front load as much as you can. Like I didn't show up day one and start doing implants. It took me a good 9 months of taking a course, buying all the stuff, and then starting to implement it and then seeing it. So it's not all from day one. You're just going to implement all this stuff. But yeah, I just wouldn't. I would get the foundation, but I also wouldn't delay ownership too much.
Yeah, maybe just like a year.
Yeah,
like 6 months to 2 years. Just kind of get that under your belt a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I would want some private practice experience. I'm glad I didn't go right from residency to owning. I think that ended up being really good. By month, I remember the moment. It was like month 2 or 3 of my associate job. I was like, okay, now I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
Like you gotta have some having some experience with the types of patients you're going to have in your ownership job is really helpful. Like you come out of residency, you've only ever saw lower socioeconomic patients, who are great. I would prefer treating them any day because they're awesome. But you also having the experience of talking to patients in a different economic class presents different challenges, and there's different considerations, and there's a lot of mindset shifting that you as a dentist need to do. It's not so much about what's the cheapest, easiest, what's my insurance cost. There's other considerations that those people are able to make, based on their means. So that's key experience. That really helps.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. Well, do you have, I guess, on the subject of residencies or just how your journey went, do you have anything else that you feel like you want to kind of touch on before we wrap up here?
I really like the implant residency idea. That's making more and more sense to me, of going to a residency that's just implants, making yourself that kind of specialty implant doc. I love that track.
Yeah.
And that's something I didn't consider back then. I don't think I knew much about it. Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah, and that's something recently that I've kind of heard of a little bit more too. Obviously, it's been through you guys, but yeah, it definitely sounds like something that could be a super good use of your time and really could benefit you in the long term.
Yeah, and other thought, we're the Share Praxis audience, as great as we are, we're very antsy. There's a lot of angst and impatience.
Oh yeah.
And do your best to take a breath and be I have a long dental career ahead of me. So if I take this year and I'm not earning 200,000 or I'm not in private practice, it's okay. you will get there.
Yeah. And
like,
it's so hard to not get stuck in that mindset. Just being around people that are, really go getters. But yeah, at the end of the day, like, you need to be thinking, 10, 20 years down the road, like, what do I want my career to look like? I feel like so many of us are like, graduation, practice, what's next? And it's like, there's so much more to that, and if you can, take a year, further improve your skills and, make your path for the rest of your time a lot smoother and easier, then I don't think that's a bad choice at all.
Yeah. And like the only other thing to add to, like, people in my school are very much like, I got to pay off loans, like day one, like I got to pay off loans. And like, you don't need to, you could, but you don't need to, like, they're going to get paid off.
Yeah.
You're going to get there. And, I know it's a scary number, and it was scary for me. And, it was part of what drove me so hard, but, you got a long career. You got a long time to pay this off. Like, it's all, I think a couple of things we've learned at SharePractice is the importance of vision, which I think we talked about a bit, like designing the program you want or choosing whether this is right for you. And like, thinking with the end in mind and making every decision on how to get me, in the best position to be in that place when I want it. And I think, for the right person, I think residency really fits.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you were saying, like, success is not linear. And like your journey isn't going to be linear either. It's not like you're going to be continually just moving ever so closer to the goal. You'll have periods that are kind of flat and you're kind of like, okay, like, I'm just kind of like strategizing here until you can make your next move. And I think residency is kind of like that. It's like, okay, you're not, in private practice, you're not making a ton of money, but you are helping you get closer to your long-term goal.
Yeah. And that's like paying off loans too. That's how I see it now, is like, it's flat for a while and then you dump in them and you spike up, and then like it's the lump sum payment better than like the linear, I'm going to pay a lot for a while.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, awesome. I really appreciate you coming on today, taking time out of your busy day here. I know you said, very, very busy guy. But yeah, we really appreciate having you on, giving us some insight on residencies, kind of serving as our internal residency expert, at least on yours. But yeah, once again, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next week on The Pursuit of Ownership.
All right. Thank you, Payton.